This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode or any other, please join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
This is Manny Cotto, executive producer of Star Trek Enterprise. You're listening to Warp 5 on Trek FM.
How we doing, Trip? Ready when you are. Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, Boomers, to another episode of Warp 5, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Enterprise. I am Patrick Devlin, and with me, as always, is the esteemed Brandon-Shea Mutala. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm excited for today's topic, and I'm very happy. I had a good sleep the other night, and yeah, everything's going great. You know, like there's lots of good TV out there right now, so things are going great. I'm gonna jump off the rails right off the bat. Have you been watching Chernobyl yet on HBO?
I have not been able to watch that yet, and
So
I
good.
really want to.
It is so good. It's like one of the greatest things ever, and it's really funny. Like it's such an amazing show, and it's written so well. And then if you go to IMDb and look up this writer's credits, it's like The Hangover 2, The Hangover 3, Scary Movie 4, like all these crazy comedy sequels, and then Chernobyl, and it's like, whoa, didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I have to check it out. I mean, literally everyone I know is talking about this show, and I just have not had time
Yes.
to sit down and watch it.
Do it. Do you want me to stop recording Warp 5 right now so you can go watch it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, we'll be right back, listeners.
All right, guys.
So what'd you think, Patrick?
Oh my God, that was amazing! No. So no, I will watch it. I mean, I'll probably watch it before Spaceballs, even. So,
Oh, you haven't watched Spaceballs yet?
dude, I haven't had time for anything really. I'm still trying to get you to untie the boat.
What boat?
The boat. We're about to talk about a boat.
Are we? Okay,
We are. At some point, we have to talk about a boat.
excellent. Well, right on. Well, should we just jump into it? We're doing movie night tonight, guys. We're doing movie night.
Yeah. So yeah, we're not talking about Chernobyl and Spaceballs, even though that second one is a movie. We're doing movie night, and we're doing Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're getting close to our the end of our movie night list. The next movie we'll be covering is The Exorcist, which I'm really looking forward to. I should look up the list and let the listeners know here. I know we wrote it down somewhere for what else is coming on movie night, but give me a second to bring it up here. But was this the first time that you saw Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, or had you seen it before?
No, I'd never seen any movie with Frankenstein before we started doing these movie nights. So This was interesting. And like 3 times I had to like go back and be like, am I really watching the right movie now? Because I didn't even look up anything about the movie going into it.
Mm-hmm.
I just put it on, you know?
Yeah. Well, this is what we've got coming up next for movies. So we've got The Exorcist, which they talked about in Doctor's Orders. We have Rosemary's Baby, which they talked about in Twilight. So I'm actually kind of excited because we got a couple horror movies coming up. Then we've got, the crew was watching Appointment with Danger at movie night in Impulse. And then it says here, he watched Phlox watched The Court Jester in Doctor's Orders. So, I mean, we've only got 4 movies left, it looks like here. 1, 2, yeah. Four movies left. That's it. We're almost done our movie night series.
Cool.
So, and then, like we said, we might do a couple of, like, tangential movies. We're still trying to work on something in the background for a special episode. We don't want to give any spoilers on that just in case it doesn't happen, but we've got some ideas for some stuff that we want to do. So
yeah, like I'd like to do like what we would put in a movie night too. You know,
Spaceballs.
talk about a few movies. We could do that. We're gonna have to at this point, right? Like that's gonna have to be at least a special episode.
Yes.
For when I finally watch it. But like no, like House on Haunted Hill, I'd like to do because you said you never saw the original one of those, right?
No, I haven't.
You would love it.
Excellent, cool. Right on. Well, tonight's Abbott, Costello Meet Frankenstein, and I had to get it through iTunes. I had to rent it through iTunes. I could not find a copy anywhere else to like stream or anything like that. So that's okay though. I enjoyed it. It was really kind of funny because I rented it on iTunes and I was up really early. I guess it was about a week and a half ago or something like that. And I watched it, and Esri came downstairs with about 10 minutes left in the movie, watched the ending of the movie with me, and she's like, I want to watch the whole thing. And so we actually put it on again, and immediately I watched the whole movie again with her. So that was pretty cool. But it was really funny because the part that scared Esri the most, so she's 5, she's almost 6. So the part that scared Esri the most was the Wolfman. And every time the Wolfman came up, she would plug her ears and close her eyes. And then a few seconds later, she would open her eyes again, but keep her fingers in her ears. So it was every time the Wolfman was transitioning and whatnot, every time the Wolfman was doing stuff. So she thought the Wolfman was pretty scary. But I was telling her, I'm like, this is a comedy movie. This is a funny movie. And so like I was making sure that I was laughing at parts that were funny so that she would catch that these things were kind of silly and whatnot. But
Right.
Watching this movie though, it's really interesting because it really shows that the line between comedy and horror is a very thin line. Because watching this movie, had Abbott and Costello not been in this could have been just a regular fourth Frankenstein movie.
Oh yeah, if they put 2 other actors and deliver the lines differently, then this is just a horror movie.
Yeah. So I think that's really interesting how thin of a line it is between the two, because I don't think I've ever really thought about it before.
Yeah, I don't think. I've never seen it before, and I haven't watched any of the Abbott and Costello Meet series, so I wouldn't have thought about it. But what's interesting, like you said, it's that close. If they just deliver their lines like typical drama lines would be delivered, not comedic lines would be delivered, it's a horror movie, and yet it's in 2007. It became number 56 of 100 funniest movies in American history.
This one?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that.
So I don't know who ranks it. It was some ranking body in America, but they ranked it. They put it in at number 56 in 2007.
Okay. Interesting.
So for someone to say, like I said, I agree with you. I don't know if I agree with that ranking, but it is what it is. But for someone to be able to rank it 56, then meanwhile, if you just change a few lines, it's just a straight horror movie. Shows just how fine of a line you're walking between just making it a horror movie.
See, we were talking just a few minutes ago about things like, Scary Movie 4 and 5 or whatever, however many there are of that because of the writer of Chernobyl, but I haven't seen those. So have you seen any of the Scary Movie movies?
1 and 2 I've seen.
1 and 2. So like, how are those played for comedy versus the horror? Would you say
they're just spoofs, like.
So it's not done like this?
No. It's
Okay.
not. It's more like what was that movie? What was that horror movie with the guys with the
Scream?
white okay, they're like the first one started off as like a spoof of Scream, and then it just got dumber. Like it was kind of like an American Pie meets a scary movie.
Okay.
But done in like the American Pie kind of comedy motif.
Okay. Yeah. No, I haven't seen any of the Scary Movie movies, so I wasn't quite sure how those played. So
the Scary Movie movies.
The Scary Movie movies. But it was interesting, and there was some stuff in here that I legitimately laughed out loud at. Like I think the first joke in the film that I thought was truly funny was the long distance call that he was getting from Lon Chaney's character, and he's turning into the Wolfman on the phone, right? And the guy is like, why are you calling long distance just to have your dog bark at me on the phone? And I'm like, it's like, I think that's a great line. I think it's really funny because it's like, you can't see what's going on, right? So, I don't know. I thought that was the best line in the movie. Because long distance in that day and age would have been like freaking expensive, right?
Oh, it would have cost a fortune. Well, first he's like, "Stop gargling on the phone, sir," or something like that, and then the dog line. Yeah, that was a really good part. But they do it so well because, like you said, he can't see, but we get to know what the truth is, so it makes it even better.
Right, exactly. So, anyway, so the premise of this film is that somebody has contacted this guy who owns a museum in this small town and sold him the corpses for Dracula and Frankenstein's monster, and he buys them so he can put them on display in his museum. And it turns out, like jumping all the way to the end, that the person who arranged all this was Dracula himself with this assistant of his. I don't know why they wanted to come here, probably just to flee Europe, I guess. That's why they came to America, I guess. What did you say?
Yeah, it just seems like, they don't really give a reason why, but because Abbott and Costello are American, it makes for a better story than them going to Europe, I guess.
Right.
I mean,
right. And then I'm not sure which one is which. Like, which one's Abbott and which one's Costello? Do you know?
Yeah, I do actually. Abbott is Chick Young, and Costello is Wilbur Gray.
Okay, so Costello
is the shorter, heavier one.
Right, yeah, okay. So Wilbur's character, thanks for reminding me because I'm bad with names. So Wilbur's character, he's dating this beautiful woman, and it turns out that the reason she's dating him is because she's Dracula's assistant, and she's dating him because he's dumb, because they want to use his brain to put into Frankenstein's monster so they can control him easier. Right?
Yes.
So that's the premise of the movie, which again, that could just be another Frankenstein story, right? They're like, somebody wants to work with the monster. They pick too smart of a brain, and so now they want to try and dumb him down a bit so they can control him more. And it's like, I don't know, to me that would be like the next logical sequel anyways.
Yeah, after the events we've seen so far, that makes perfect sense that would be the next step. I forget why he was in a weakened state, though, at that point.
They kept saying Frankenstein was in a weakened state, but then he's, like, still carrying heavy stuff all the time anyways. I couldn't quite get that either. I just chucked it up to, like, 1950s writing or whatever it was. But one thing that's kind of interesting, too, with us having just watched Son of Frankenstein, is that Bela Lugosi was Igor, and in this one, Bela Lugosi's Dracula, right?
Yes.
And in both of those movies, he was controlling the Frankenstein monster, which was, kind of interesting. So,
yeah, but what I liked, like when he wakes up Frankenstein, he immediately starts calling him master.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is a comedy, so it is what it is. But like, I was like, well, why do they need a brain? He seems perfectly. He's listening.
Yeah.
He's lifting stuff.
Yep. And
he's trying to strangle people. Like, he seems fine to me.
I don't know. Like, he seems like a normal monster. Like, I don't know. Like, it works for me. So, I don't have a justification for that either. Like, this is not the strongest plot ever.
No, and it is a comedy. So I don't. Again, if you were talking about Scary Movie. If you like movies like Scary Movie, you're not looking at it for major plot points. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what you're going into these for, I guess.
Right. Right, exactly. Like, what the heck was it I was just watching? I just watched. Oh, that's right. When you go into a comedy movie, I think of fandom because you and we provide what I interpret as critical analysis of things like Star Trek Discovery online, and people seem to get upset when you point out plot holes. And so my wife and I were watching Old School the other day, right? And I'm like, this movie doesn't make, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, critical analysis, this movie doesn't make any sense, right? Like, there's no way these people could get away with any of this stuff and having this thing on campus and, like, say, creating a fraternity with people that don't even go to school. But when you're watching a movie like Old School, it doesn't matter. The plot holes and inconsistencies don't matter because you're just there for fun. You're just there for laughter. And it's the absurd concept of the movie that is why you're watching the movie. You know, Old School is probably my favorite comedy. I think it's absolutely hilarious. But you're not trying to take it seriously. There's nothing in Old School that you're trying to take seriously. Where when we provide critical analysis and other stuff, we are trying to take these things seriously because they're being presented seriously. Right? And in a movie like this, it's not being presented seriously, like it is to a certain extent. And that's where the double-edged sword of the comedy horror comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Like you said, but I don't think it was to the point where, like, these inconsistencies didn't ruin this movie for me.
No.
So it wasn't enough to, like, all of a sudden, you know, if Frankenstein's monster started, you know, doing tap dance, okay, then I'd have a problem. But, like, to just have these kind of inconsistencies in this type of comedic horror, it's fine because, like you said, this is not what I'm here for. I'm not here for some massive social commentary. I'm just here to laugh at Abbott and Costello running away from Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I liked is, it's Franken. I would have probably named the movie Abbott and Costello Meet Dracula, but you know, you don't see just Frankenstein. You see the Wolfman, Dracula, all of these. Abbott and Costello Meet have multiple horror characters of the time, which is
do they?
Cool.
Okay, because this is again the only one I've seen. But yeah, there's 3 in here, and they're the 3 main ones: Wolfman, Dracula, and Frankenstein's monster. We get a slight cameo from the Invisible Man at the very end, right, for one final joke scare. But yeah, it is like if I remember correctly, I think it's like House of Frankenstein is the name of the movie. And it's mostly about Dracula, if I remember correctly, right? So, or maybe it's called House of Dracula and it's mostly about Frankenstein, but it's one of the two, right?
Yeah.
Even here, it's not really about Frankenstein because Dracula's the antagonist that's driving everything.
Right, and he's playing 2 roles. You know, he's Dracula and he's masquerading as what's his name?
Bob.
Yes, Dr. Lejos. Mm-hmm. You know, like when he's not in the Dracula persona in front of Abbott and Costello, you know, he's masquerading as so he has like a lot of screen time and he's not even mentioned in the name of the movie.
Yeah, no. It's great to see Bela Lugosi does such a great job of Dracula, though. I love seeing him in the role. So,
so you were saying that one of your favorite lines was the on the phone, but I loved when he got out of the coffin. Walked to the back of the room and just stood up,
yes,
holding up the thing, and then snuck back into the coffin just to scare Costello again. Like, I don't know. I thought that was great because first he was covering his face, you know, with that typical covering his face look, and that whole interaction with every time he was reading the candle would slide down the coffin because he was raising the lid and then closing it.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed all that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And then the other plot, the secondary plot that's going on here is that they think that the bodies are gone, so the guy who ordered them is trying to get an insurance claim on them because they weren't dead, they were undead or whatever, and they walked away. And so the insurance company has an investigator who is on the case because she figures that these Abbott and Costello, who run this shipping company, will be able to find the bodies if she sticks with them. And so we've got this other plot of this investigator, this woman investigator. And the other favorite joke that I have in this, I thought was really clever. And going back on it, I should have seen where the punchline was going, but it caught me by surprise, was the woman that's working with Dracula is quote unquote attracted to Costello. And this insurance person is quote-unquote attracted to Costello. So Costello thinks he's got these 2 hot women after him. And Abbott is like, I want to have one of them. Give me one of them. You can't have 2. And so they come up with this hypothetical situation of like, what if you had 3? And she's like, her name was Mary. And she was really beautiful. And she loved you because they're saying you would share a cigarette if you had it. You would share your shoes if you had it. They talk about this at this point. If you had a 3rd girl, you would share one with me, right? And Costello's like, yes, I would. And he's like, well, which one would you give me? And then he's like, Mary. You could have Mary. Who's this hypothetical one? So he could keep the 2 real ones. And I'm like, I didn't see that joke coming. And you should have. And I thought I totally laughed out loud when I heard it because I just wasn't expecting the punchline of that joke. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, he was trying to walk him into giving him one of these, and he gives him the fake one. It's great. So another part I really liked, it's at the end, but when he's running onto the dock, when Costello is running onto the dock, and he runs into the guy who owns the House of Horrors, and he's like, do you want your bodies, or whatever he calls them? And he's like, yeah, well, here they come, and then they come running out of the brush too.
Yes.
And he just dives into the lake.
Yes. Yep. There's a lot of that slapstick comedy. See, like I'm not a big slapstick comedy fan, and like so there's like a lot of slapstick comedy. They're slapping each other, they're hitting each other, people are falling down, and like that's the source of a lot of the humor, right? Like the humor that I've enjoyed in this is the dialogue humor and the clever play on words. I'm not really a slapstick comedy kind of guy. What do you think of?
I'm probably not like I'm not a three. What are their names?
Three Stooges.
Thank you. I kept wanting to say Musketeers, and that's wrong. I'm not a huge, I'm not even really a big Three Stooges fan, but I felt like there wasn't an overabundance of it. It wasn't like hit after hit after hit. You know what I mean? So to me, like little things here and there are okay.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy it if it's presented this way.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Not
every one of them landed, but a lot of it landed for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of Abbott Costello's comedy is probably slapstick. Like, again, I'm not very familiar with their work. I think this is the only Abbott Costello thing I've ever seen in my life. And I don't really watch the Three Stooges. I've seen a few skits here and there. But again, that slapstick type of comedy is not really my thing.
Yeah, me neither. The only other thing I've watched from Abbott Costello is the Who's on First.
Okay. Oh, that's them?
I mean, yeah, everyone's heard that, so, right?
Yeah.
So, they're actually the only non-baseball players or people never affiliated with a baseball team in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Oh.
For that, yeah.
There you go.
So there's a few non-players. Like there's like teams put in like certain mascots that have been around for 100 years, but they were affiliated with clubs, obviously. So these were not. But you saw some of that kind of like Who's on First type of writing in this still, like with the women, with get the phone, get the bell, get the phone, get the bell, get them both. Like those kind of. It's that similar like writing style of jokes.
Mm-hmm. So did they write? I didn't even look in any of the credits. Who wrote?
I don't
this?
know. I didn't look that deep either. Actually, I don't know who wrote it.
I wonder if they wrote it. Let's see if we can find out online. Are you looking it up?
It's written by Robert Lees, Frederick I. Rinaldo, and John Grant.
Mm-hmm.
Produced by Robert Author, directed by Charles Barton.
Okay.
And then it gives characters by Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, Kurt. I don't know how to say that last name. Siodmark.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Siodmark, and H.G. Wells. So yeah, and the music was by Frank Skinner. Oh, but I did find out. Okay, so. It was Reader's Digest selected the movie as one of the top 100 funniest films of all time. The film is numbered 56th on the list of American Film Institute's 100 funniest American movies. And in 2001, the United States Library of Congress deemed the film culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Okay, yeah, good. Very done.
So that's the big honors that this movie has gotten.
Mm-hmm. I got to say that, one of the best things I think about modern, digital technology and whatnot is how much effort's been put into restoring a lot of these old movies. Like the transfer that I watched in high definition on iTunes was just beautiful. Like it looked stunning, and previously, like in VHS era, like the quality of films that you would get on VHS, were terrible, and not because they were VHS. It was because the transfers that had been done were like copies of copies of copies over time. And now such an effort has been made to go back to original elements, the original negatives, or as close as they can to the original element in order to preserve it. And companies like the Criterion Collection have been champions of this type of film restoration. And it's really amazing because so much films have been lost over time. Like we talked about this on my Hitchcock podcast, Good Evening, and Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Like one of his second movie, The Mountain Eagle, is gone. Like it's just, there's no copies of this movie that exist.
Really?
Yeah, so like nobody has a copy of it anywhere because film preservation didn't really exist, and the way they didn't really keep good quality care of movies and stuff. And a couple of the interesting things that Criterion has had is one of them they had is a silent film called The Passion of Joan of Arc, and a copy of this film, I'm vaguely remembering because it's been a long time since I watched the bonus features, was found in, like, it's a middle European country that it was made in, and somewhere else, some other middle European country, they found a copy of this film in a can, in a closet, in an insane asylum.
What?
Yeah, I know. Like, it was just they thought this film was lost, and they just found a copy of this film one day and were able to restore it, right? After, like, decades and decades of nobody having seen this film, and there's a German film that I really like called Metropolis. The original German cut of this film is, like, 2 hours and some minutes long, and they were only able to find cut copies, like edited down copies of it, like that they were shortened for release and whatnot. But some church in like Venezuela or something like this had like a 16 millimeter transfer, which had most of that missing footage. So if you look at Kino Lorber's Blu-ray release, there's a lot of stuff where they were able to get some of those original elements that look really good. But because it was on 35, and this copy that they found was on 16 millimeter, there is a difference in size of film, and some of the film was lost, but they were able to take those 16 millimeter elements and put them into the movie. So there is an aspect ratio change as you're watching it, but you're actually getting the most complete version of this film ever. And I mean, like, well, none of this has anything to do with Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I really appreciate what people are doing with film in this day and age, and how much effort people are putting in to restore these classics. And it really showed in this version that I watched of this movie. It was glorious. The blacks were beautiful. Blacks were so rich and dark, and it was wonderful. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like the copy I had looked like it was filmed, recently, relatively recently. The colors were so crisp. Obviously, you'd look at the technology of changing Dracula into the Bat, and you could tell it was old special effects, but the film didn't look old. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, it was well restored, and it's amazing because, like you were saying, I mean, you said it doesn't really tie into this, but it does, because who in 1948 ever thought the United States Library of Congress would be preserving movies for cultural or historical reasons? Like, I guess I could see historical reasons, like, video of Pearl Harbor bombing or, stuff like that. But Abbott and Costello, I'm sure they didn't expect that to go into the Library of Congress for preservation reasons, And now there's a special room that makes sure the humidity is right so that the film doesn't degrade, and all these other special lights so that they don't ruin the negatives and whatever. I'm sure it cost a fortune to build this place. Then, even that movie was released in 1948, and it wasn't even inducted into that until 2001. Mm-hmm. So it's still, I mean, they're taking a long time to decide what movies are significant enough to be putting them in, but at least they're getting them in before they're destroyed.
Right. Do you know where this place is? Where this library is?
It's probably in D.C.
Mm-hmm. I would like to check that out sometime. I think it would be neat to see. So, is there anything else on the movie you want to talk about? I mean, as far as the plot and whatnot, I think we've kind of covered everything. There isn't really, it's not the most in-depth plot. Check it out; it's worth it. I enjoyed the movie. It's not something I'd revisit to very often. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Right? I mean, it's not terrible. But
yeah, I'd probably rate it a little higher. I mean, not 5, but I'd probably give it a 3, 3.5.
That's pretty good,
maybe. But so yeah, I think it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Out of all the movies with the name Frankenstein in it, it's my favorite.
Is it really?
So, yeah. But I mean, it was more than just a Frankenstein movie too. That's the thing. Like, the name is misleading, because you do get a lot with Dracula and the Wolfman too, and. Bela Lugosi is great, even in a comedy.
Yeah.
He's still Dracula. He still does a great Dracula. The Wolfman is good, like, just lock me in the room. And, and through all this, Abbott just doesn't want to believe, which is pretty cool. I like that little because that's the angle that this movie's filmed in, that Will Costello, seen it and believes it, and Abbott just thinks he's crazy.
Right. Right. And, at the end, he's like, well, next time will you believe me when I tell you, right? Because he's definitely seen something. But as you mentioned that, when they're, like, talking about locking the room, there was another joke that was really good in this that I forgot that I wanted to mention, was when they go to barricade themselves in the room because Frankenstein monster's chasing after them, and they move that bed in front of the door.
Phenomenal. And they put their shoulders up against it.
And then Frankenstein, it opens the other way, so they didn't actually do anything, which is, which is true. Doors don't actually work that way, because I don't know. As soon as that joke happened, I thought about it, and I'm like, no, doors going into rooms always open inward.
Yes.
They don't open outward, but it's still a funny joke.
Yes.
Right, so, anyways, yeah, every door in my house, the doors all open into the room. It's not something you think about, right?
No, you would have to be barricaded into the room, not out of the room, but yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly, so...
But it was good. Like I enjoyed it. Like it was funny, especially like because they made a point to jump up and put their shoulders on the door, and then in that one, Abbott sees him and Costello doesn't see him at first.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a second. Like I like that kind of like surprise humor that happens in this movie a lot. It happens quite often. And I don't know. I enjoy that. And then in that whole scene, it was good because they'd run out of the room. And you got Dracula trying to hit the Wolfman over the head with a chair. I don't know. I just liked it. And I like the fact that not all three of them were just against Abbott Costello.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The Wolfman was spending the whole time trying to convince Abbott also that this was real, and then Abbott gets framed for biting people.
Right. Yeah. With the mask, because they thought he was the So yeah, and it's good. I don't know. I thought it was really good. And again, I mean, like, yeah. Some of it's not believable, but whatever. I mean, it's just a comedy movie, and it's just played for comedy.
Yeah,
so I'm okay with that.
Frankenstein gets set on fire again. He falls into the water. Like,
yeah. Excellent. Okay, right on. Well, that's it for Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. That's it for this week's movie night. We will be back next time, and we'll be talking about T'Pol and her interactions with humans. We got special guest for that episode, which we will be recording very shortly, because we do our double episodes back to back. But yeah, we'll be doing... we're going to try and alternate it so like every 4 episodes-ish or so we're going to wrap these movie nights up. So yeah, 3 episodes from now will be The Exorcist. So if you want to jump ahead and watch that one. And hopefully this time I will not fall asleep and I'll actually be able to finish this movie. So I have not been a big fan of it, but we got a guest on who does love the movie. So
I've never watched it.
No?
A lot of these, I think that's one of the things I like the most about this is, like, a lot of these are, like, movies that were somewhat significant when I was growing up or whatever, like, a lot of people talking about them or whatever, but I never really got into them. Growing up, I wasn't at a TV, ever. Mm-hmm. So I missed a lot of things from, like, the 80s and 90s that people should have seen. Okay. Because I was out playing baseball or basketball. I was in, like, 5 or 6 different leagues as a kid, So now getting back to go and watch them, it's funny because I see them in a different way than, like, you could tell people who watched them and loved them as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I see things in them that I'm like, it doesn't work for me, but it definitely works for someone who watched it as a kid,
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm hoping Esri remembers this and might want to watch it again, and it has a little memory for her of watching this movie with Dad, and
it's interesting just how
something that scared her because she's sitting there with her fingers in her ears and like. Because the Wolfman's changing into the Wolfman and whatnot.
They did that very well, by the way, too.
Yeah, I mean,
changing him was very well done, especially considering the time.
The best werewolf transition ever is American Werewolf in London. Have you seen that?
Again, no.
Oh my goodness, it's the greatest werewolf transformation in all of cinema.
Now I have. You just keep adding things I have to watch.
Yes, good. Don't watch American Werewolf in Paris. It's not very good. American Werewolf in London is really good.
Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, talking about barking dogs on telephones is not all we've been discussing this week here on the network. So take a quick listen to this clip and see what else you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, The Orb.
I'm not sure that our mindset has necessarily changed drastically from 1993 to 2019. Perhaps it has. I think it has a bit. But the tendency for this kind of thing to happen may have been there then, but the difference is that today we have these platforms like Twitter and Facebook that amplify it, and it is much easier for people to get together into these groups and push a certain agenda or attack an individual.
Melodic Treks.
But I did actually look back to a lot of the older stuff, like the Jerry Goldsmith scores and even like the James Horner scores. I thought the orchestration style, like I thought was really, really cool to me. Kind of had this more classical, like using only the orchestra, but creating these spooky textures and stuff. I always really loved that kind of sound.
Literary Treks.
And all of a sudden, we see a panel that shows where Kirk and Crisp are. I want to call her Crispy for a second.
There's Spock and Crisp, I think, right?
Okay, yeah, Spock and Crisp. I love that cereal. And I had some Kellogg's Spock and Crisp the other day.
Warp 5.
You don't give them the tools they need moving forward. It's great to give someone their freedom, but you have to then stay there and help them to get to the next step so that they don't need you anymore to do that. That was the problem with the episode. And I think that plays a big role in not just this episode, but society in general. We've done that a lot in other countries, and we've gone and knocked out regimes and, whatever. And then we don't do anything for the people there. So we're back in the same boat or a worse boat than we were when we started.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
So check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, please be sure to hit the subscribe button at Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they're published. And please leave us a star rating and a written review. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and by extended long distance from London. You can stream and download the MP3 files from our website or grab the RSS link as well.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select Warp 5. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Brandon, when I'm not rowing vigorously and you're leaving us tied to the boat and Frankenstein's throwing stuff at us, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala. You can find me here on the network once a month with Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. And as of this recording, I will be recording an episode tomorrow on the music of Aliens by James Horner. So that'll be the next Melodic Treks. You can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network with my friends Chris and Tom, where we have Good Evening and Alfred Hitchcock Podcast, going over all the Hitchcock films. And we had a great episode drop today on The Lady Vanishes. If you're listening to this the day that Warp 5 drops, we had special guest film critic Farron Nemay on, and it was a really good discussion on The Lady Vanishes. So be sure to check that out. You can find me on the United Federation of Podcast Network with my friend Zach. We have a show called Franchise Fatigue, where we go over all the films in a franchise, all the sequels and the remakes, and we talk about them one episode at a time. And I think that's about it. Got some other stuff on the way, but I think that's about it for now. So I was on Twilight Zone podcast a couple of times, and the last episode of the Twilight Zone podcast I was on, we talked about the Blurry Man season finale of the first season of the new Twilight Zone.
Yeah, so you bookended that, huh?
Well, kind of, because we were on for Nightmare at 30,000 Feet, but then that turned out to be the second episode. So
Right, because they weren't sure when you saw it which order it was going to come out.
Yeah, when we recorded them, they hadn't said which was going to be the first one, and then it turned out to be The Comedian.
Yeah.
But he did air the podcast for Nightmare at 30,000 Feet first. So
Right. And they really, they were, I mean, yes, it was the second episode, but they dropped together, so.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Patrick, where can people find you when you're not sitting on Frankenstein Monster's lap?
Oh, that's such a great scene. I love that scene. I really did like that. That's another one. So when I'm not doing that and he's slowly trying to hug me, and I slam my own hand, but when that's not happening, you can find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5, and you can find me popping up in the Babel conference from time to time, and coming to you with my good friend Amy Nelson on The Edge on this network. Other than that, I don't really pop up many places. I was on one episode of Phantasm Fatigue with you for Toy Story 2. And
it's not been released yet, but it'll be coming out soon.
It's coming out after this drops?
Yeah, it'll be coming out on the Wednesday following the release of this.
Oh, cool. So, listen to that. I think we did a good job on that one, and I think you guys do a good job on all of them, but, I want to tout myself here. And that's really it. You can't really find me any other places.
Yeah, excellent. Right on. We were happy to have you on. You definitely lowered the bar for us.
Well, someone's got to do it. You got to make all the other guests look really good.
Excellent. Cool. Okay, well, that's all we got for you this time. So, until next time.
No, we didn't even do patrons.
Oh, geez, you're right. I'm sorry, guys. If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM. And at this time, we'd like to thank the wonderful associate producers of Warp 5. And they are Norman C. Lau, Floyd Dorsey, Mike Morrison, Tim Cooper, Justin Ozer, Mark Flessa, Chris Chibuzio, and Jim McMahon. Thank you so much for your support of Warp 5 in particular and Trek FM as a whole. We couldn't do it without you. We greatly appreciate it. Now we're done. Now we've got nothing else to say.
That's it.
So until next time, you can't be afraid of the wind.